guys, welcome to the Masters of SaaS podcast, brought to you by Uproar Media, a growth marketing agency for SaaS, specializing in paid media, content, and conversion rate optimization. I'll be your host, Todd Chambers. I have the absolute pleasure of chatting with really smart people from the SaaS industry. The goal is to extract as much value as possible. What are their strategies, their tactics, their failures, funny stories, key learnings? All of this can then be used to help you grow and scale your own SaaS business. In this episode, I speak with Alex Theuma, the CEO and founder of SaaStock, a global community for SaaS founders, execs, and investors. Prior to COVID-19, they ran the largest in-person SaaS events in Europe, with a flagship event being held in Dublin each year. In March 2020, ticket sales dried up, and SaaStock's revenue quickly went to zero. For any entrepreneur, this would have been an incredibly challenging period. You had to quickly pivot, remobilise, and switch to an online event experience. We discussed what this was like from a business and personal perspective, the key learnings from running their first large-scale online event, and critically, the future of the online event experience. Alex was very open and honest, and it made for a really interesting episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's jump right in. Hey, Alex, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Todd. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure's all mine. Cool. Well, if you don't mind, let's start off with the origin story of SaaStock. When did you start building it? Why did you build it, and kind of what is it?
Good question. So I guess sort of like when did I start building it? I mean, back in 2015 was when the idea sort of started to kind of ruminate. I was working as a sales exec for a software company at the time. I had been there actually for 3.5 years, so like a Russian software company, and started to, during that period, learn more about cloud and SaaS applications. Was also kind of really yearning for that entrepreneurial thing to do, but I didn't know what that was, at the time. I'd previously had lots of entrepreneurial ideas through my 20s, but then when it came to, I never really had the drive at that time to kind of act on anything. And then when it came to like, I really want to do something and give it a go, I wasn't sure what that would be. So I ended up kind of falling into SaaStock by starting a blog, and I just kind of wanted to initially push myself outside of my comfort zone. And I thought, hey, I've never written a blog before, wrote a blog post, so why don't I give it a go? Came up with the idea with SaaScribe, which kind of pivoted very kind of quickly based on my kind of writing skills and knowledge of SaaS, which weren't amazing kind of at the time, to be a community-driven blog. And that worked really well and effectively, because I managed to get somehow influencers bought into the idea and the why of SaaScribe. I got them creating original content whilst I was kind of editing and directing the vision and I guess the content that we were creating, and that enabled it to, I guess, get a good amount of traffic very early on, and put SaaScribe kind of on the radar, community, aware of what was happening, and I quickly supplemented that with the podcast, and again pushing myself outside the comfort zone. Very nervous early on when I was doing podcasts and stuff, but managed to get good quality, high caliber, I would say, guests on like Mark Roberge, who was CRO at HubSpot at the time, Owen McCabe, CEO of Intercom at the time, just to name sort of two, like a sort of early guest. And again, that kind of, there weren't a huge amount of SaaS podcasts back then, quite a few now. And therefore that kind of helped grow the awareness of SaaScribe. And then I was like, well, what is the kind of next thing? And I started doing meetups. So all of a sudden I had a blog, I had some podcasts, I was doing some local meetups, right? And building a community, and there's a couple of thousand people sort of like in the community, and it's like having conversations. What do I do with this? I'm really interested. I'm not sure where it's going. What's the direction? How do I monetize it? Is this the thing that's going to enable me to leave my full-time job? What was coming out of the conversations I was having with members of the community, both online and in person at the meetups, was, hey, we really need a SaaS conference in Europe. Why don't you do it? Because you're building a SaaS empire. Like at the time, I used to laugh at that, and it was a small kind of community that we were building. But I was just bringing people together, but I was very determined. I thought, well, the conference seemingly could be the key channel, to be a revenue driver, and make this a business, because it wasn't a business. And I tried a bit of advertising, and I tried to sell a bit of sponsorship, but wasn't really working. But then when I came up with the event idea, actually the people in the community came up with the event idea, when I kind of acted on it, that was when actually I was able to then monetize it by selling sponsorships for the event, selling tickets for the event. It grew from there. The first year we managed to get 700 people to the first SaaStock event. So we had SaaScribe, and I had two brands then. I had SaaScribe.com and I had SaaStock, which was the conference. And I took the inspiration to like the Woodstock of SaaS, right, and came up with SaaStock. And we got 700 people to the first one. It generated a decent amount of money, but we lost money still, even though, so revenue was good, profitability was poor, but still then we managed to kind of, dig ourselves out of a little of a hole and kind of scale that. Doubled in size the next year, doubled in size, the year after that. So for 3 years, we'd built this sort of conference in Europe, which actually became a global event for founders, execs, and VCs to attend for a couple of days in Dublin to help them learn how to, build and grow a SaaS business, and also we've become like quite well known as a place to go to meet with VCs and get investment. I think sort of year 3 kind of dropped the SaaScribe brand because managing 2 brands is quite difficult. Put all the content of SaaScribe and the SaaS Revolution Show podcast under the SaaStock umbrella and focus on the SaaStock brand, as that was what was driving revenue. And what SaaStock is today, it's our mission to make a difference to the lives and companies of the SaaS community. We do a lot for SaaS founders, but also investors as well, by connecting them together. This year, we've digitized the business. So we've gone through that digital transformation from being an in-person conference business to being an online conference business. We're starting, a membership program, and effectively, it's all really just to kind of like help founders really grow their businesses. So.
Yeah, great. And we'll definitely dig more into current state of SaaStock. I'm sure that's changed a lot in 2020. So we'll definitely dig into that. Being a man that's quite deeply entrenched in the SaaS industry, I guess your fingers on the pulse, especially in Europe. How big do you think the SaaS market is? And maybe not so much in terms of revenue. How many SaaS companies are there? And I've done my own research on this, and you get varying numbers. And I guess the size of the SaaS market will directly correlate to the size of your company. So yeah, what is the size of the SaaS market, do you think?
Yeah, and again, it depends. As you say, there's lots of like different sort of data out there, and also anecdotal kind of data that we sort of look at. And I do believe that you've got your kind of traditional, let's say the companies that were born as SaaS companies, and like a Chartmobile, for instance, serving self-service sort of SMB or scaling up to kind of enterprise, and these kind of like born as a SaaS business. I would say in Europe, there's probably around about like 15,000, or more within Europe. But then I also believe that every software company has a SaaS element. They should by now, right? Every software company is becoming a SaaS company, and every SaaS company is effectively really, also a software company. So if you included all these legacy software companies like Sage, for instance, which obviously does have now, or probably leads with their kind of cloud and SaaS, components, that number does increase, sort of like doubles the size of the market there. US is still the biggest market, but Europe, has really kind of rapidly grown. You also see a lot of churn. There are thousands of SaaS companies that are being started kind of each year, and then they just kind of like die, because they haven't been able to find product market fit and traction. In that early stage, that's where you see like the high growth and new entrants each year. And so I'm always being surprised just like the number of, I've never heard of this company, and they all kind of look quite exciting. Such a high percentage of them never make it, through to that kind of first million.
What SaaS companies are doing well? And I guess I'm looking for kind of the outside of the Zoom, the Hopin, the Slack, these huge big companies that have just been, given a gift of God. But like in general, in terms of the lay of the land, what types of SaaS companies do you see are kind of working particularly well, given where we are today?
Yeah, well, you took away the easy answer for me there, because I was
sorry.
I was like, you said softball. I was going to say Hopin and Zoom and Shopify, right? But it's an interesting one. So because SaaS is having I think a banner year. It's one of those industries that has almost been COVID proof, because everything's kind of online. It's been able to kind of help that transition. A lot of the tools in SaaS really enables things like remote work and so on, right? And enables obviously the e-commerce and just for us with the world going through. And you've seen those quotes. I think like. Was it Satya Nadella and some others said about 2 years worth of transformation in 2 weeks, or digital transformation, maybe 2 months, right? But we've kind of seen that, and all these SaaS tools are really kind of enabling it, which is fantastic. So again, really good industry to kind of be in. But there are a number of SaaS companies that also have faced a lot of like high churn, because if you're serving the SMB market, and a lot of SMBs who aren't COVID proof and are using SaaS tools, many of them, when they had to cut costs, they had to cut non-essential. We did the same. Like, we got rid of, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 10 sort of tools that we were using. It was like, okay, let's just kind of cut costs here. These are not core. We didn't get rid of our CRM. We didn't get rid of our ticketing platform. Maybe social media scheduling or something like that. It's like, do we need to be spending that? Do we need to be having something around helping to promote podcasts or whatever? And so just kind of tweaking. And I think some of those businesses that are not essential, not core, would have suffered. And I've seen that even, and I think it's fine to talk about it because it was in our own podcast. So like Buffer, that has grown very well as a bootstrap business it surpassed 20 million in ARR in revenue. We had Joel Gascoigne from Buffer on our podcast, the SaaS Revolution show. And, he said, well, we got to 22 million in ARR, but this year we've gone down to 21 because we've had a lot of like high churn. So businesses that are doing well are ones that are really kind of core and sort of embedded, I think, into the workflow. Essential for the businesses. And if you're just kind of a feature or a nice to have, and if you serve SMBs, then you may have experienced quite a bit of churn.
Yeah, for sure. I think if anyone's looking to start a SaaS company, you've got to either be first or essential, or you've got to be, wildly different. You've got to have a really, really strong brand, right? Because I don't say everyone's jumping on the SaaS bandwagon, but the barrier to creating a SaaS company is so much easier now. And if you think you can just build another social media scheduling tool or another collaboration tool, you kind of need to do something different. You need to have like a niche. You either need to be first, or you need to be exceptional. So
yeah, 100%.
Again, you spoke to so many different people in the SaaS space, so many great people. Are there, not to put you on the spot in terms of singling people out, but I guess I'm going to, are there people that, if you're looking to start a SaaS company, maybe you're earlier stage, you're trying to get traction, is there maybe one or two people you can recommend that those people should follow, go and listen to all their talks? And then at the other end, if you're like a much bigger company and you're millions in ARR, who are those one or two people you think would be worth following?
Good question. I mean, I think there's both from an investor side and a founder side, like people that are kind of worth following, right? Probably too many to mention, but like ones that spring to mind. So, from an investor side, David Scott, for instance, has, created some great content. He's got like 172 slide deck, which is out on forentrepreneurs.com, which is like, I think it's like the 9 like steps or whatever to repeatable, profitable SaaS company to build. It's like great content. But I think you should definitely follow David Scott. He's not hugely, he's not putting out content, kind of each week or each month. But when it comes out, it's important. Yeah, so somebody that does regular content, and I don't know if he does it every. I used to do it every day. Thomas Tungus used to do a post every day, I think. Again, really, really great content for any SaaS CEO. I would say sort of specifically. So definitely two from a VC side that I would call out. Founders, there are loads. I think like one I particularly like is David Darmanin, who's the CEO of Hotjar. On top of being a super great guy, he's bootstrapped Hotjar to 6 million in revenue 30 million in revenue in 6 years. And in the fully remote company, I think it's remarkable what he's done. But they also put out some like really good content. Who else? I mean, Patrick Campbell, like if you look at like in terms of like creating content, he's like a bit of a machine on content, and they have a lot of data that that Profitwell shares, which I think is really interesting. And he's spoken at so many SaaStock conferences. Always, gets kind of ranked as like one of the best speakers.
He has the data to back it up as well, right? I guess that's the unique thing about him. They have the biggest data index of the subscription business, right?
Exactly, and it always goes down really well. And even like on our YouTube channel, his talk from SaaStock in 2016 is our most popular talk today, and he's got like 89,000 views at present or something like that. So there's a couple that I would call out, but yeah, lots of founders are doing great content, which is really good to see.
Yeah, great recommendations there. Particularly, I would agree with Patrick. I was listening him to Yeah, actually, one of a SaaStock event, I believe, on my bike ride on the way home yesterday. So yeah, and I was actually thinking on the way home, man, this guy's a smart guy.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, a big chunk of the rest of our time together, I'd like to speak about the event space, the world that you're in, and just to set the stage for everybody and to give context. I mean, you've been building an offline event business for since 2015, 16. You built the team up. You've done incredibly well. I think I heard you on another podcast. You were saying, January 2020 comes by. We're all geared up. We're ready to go. It's going to be an amazing year. I think you said you had record revenue in January as well, and then obviously the world went sideways. So, do you mind if I ask this on a kind of personal level? Me personally as well, our business has been affected by COVID, and I can kind of resonate with anybody that's had their business affected. But how is that for you on a personal, having spent all those years building it and then getting dealt this?
Yeah. I mean, definitely tough. I guess I've built up some resilience, kind of over the years, and also half Finnish on my mum's side, and they have this thing called sisu, which is a bit like sort of like Finnish stoicness or whatever, right?
Yes.
I I think these qualities have probably or certainly like helped me, but definitely I think from being a founder and even being in events, right, you've got to have a level of resilience. But yeah, as you said, like we've grown this sort of like multi-million-dollar revenue business, and then we had this like fantastic January, fantastic start to the year, and then we just started to see obviously COVID kind of sweeping across the world. And then MWC, Mobile World Congress, which was the first kind of like big event of the year, certainly like Europe, saw that got cancelled, and then in March, this domino effect of like pretty much every single event in March and April got cancelled. And then we made a very kind of quick decision to basically, like, because we had no certainty and no one knew what was going on in the world, to kind of cancel all our in-person events. And then our revenue went to, it went to zero, pretty much towards like, end of February. And I had 26 people on the payroll, lots of bills. We paid lots of money for the in-person conferences and, deposits for venues and travel and stuff like that. We couldn't get our money back, and
it's tough.
So it was tough, but there was a fleeting moment, and a very fleeting, which, I was like, oh, well, is a pandemic, going to kind of kill the business, right? I'd never kind of thought about this 4 years ago. It wasn't part of the business plan, how to be kind of pandemic proof. What we did, I was like, okay, well, right, okay, we've got to think about what do we need to do. We acted very quickly, so there was a lot of speed within, I guess, my thought, but also the business. We got the execs together. We sort of had a war room meeting, and we had like 7 ideas of like how we can, pivot and get back to revenue quickly. And the one that we decided on was obviously virtual events, because we thought, well, it was the quickest time to value, quickest time to revenue, and it was from our skill set of what we've been doing, probably the one that we could execute the best, like with most certainty. We had lots of other great ideas, right? Including, there was like SaaS platforms and stuff like that. And it's like, well, look, that could take, it might never get off the ground. It could take 12 to 18 months. So we've got to know.
Yeah.
I've got to go with what we kind of know and what we feel is, is going to work the best. So I think from some point in, well, certainly March, we were 0 revenue, but we were working towards SaaStock Remote, which became our first online conference, and that was in June, and we got back to revenue in April. So we had a couple of weeks once we launched SaaStock Remote, where we were speaking to a lot of people who were really excited about it. Existing partners, new partners. We hadn't got any deals in yet. I think sales team were losing a bit of motivation about, can we really sell like virtual events and so on. Then we got the first deals in, and then then it kind of started to happen. And anyway, we pulled it together. We ran our first event. Revenue was nowhere near what an in-person conference is. However, the costs were so low, so it's actually, from a business model perspective, much more profitable. So I was actually, hold on a minute, I quite like this as a business model. Like, if we can figure this out, then do I need to be spending hundreds of thousands on costs to run in-person events? So even like our Dublin event, we spent probably like certainly north of $1 million, on that in terms of expenses, right? So I was like, well, actually, this is much more appealing, less risk, but obviously less revenue, but we could build potentially a more profitable business. Now, so we did that. We ran the first conference. I think overall it was a success, but not everything kind of works. And it was our first event online, and we were learning. Yeah, I think like from then we've done. I think we've done 4 more since then, and we just kind of keep iterating and improving and learning kind of what works. Definitely, revenue is like it's massive. Like I mean, we're kind of 50% down year over year on revenue, but we're generating revenue to kind of sustain the business. Looking at ways where we can continue to kind of grow that.
Yeah, and we'll dig into SaaStock Remote and the whole online event experience, because we were actually we took a booth at the SaaStock Remote, so I was quite familiar with that first event, and I'm keen to understand what were the learnings from that and kind of what you see moving forwards. But actually, just to go back to my my question, and thank you for your answer, but how did that affect you personally? And I know that's quite a deep question, but like you spent so long building that thing up, and then it's even now you're 50% down in revenue. And I know as an entrepreneur, you've already burnt your ships, and you have to move forward and go ahead. But like, how is that morale to keep yourself picked up? It's tough, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely been tough. I mean, I think like for that period when we were doing SaaStock Remote, it wasn't as bad as potentially it could have been, but like because we effectively had one single goal, and I never like everybody. We had, we were very transparent. I was very transparent about what was happening. We had our backs to the wall, but everybody worked, super hard towards that one single goal, and actually, but the motivation levels became, like really high, and the team. I've probably never seen the team so aligned, unified towards that. So actually, we all kind of rode towards this, and we were seeing some lights towards and a pathway to success. Now we didn't quite hit our revenue goals on remote, but overall we were kind of happy that we did it. But after remote, because people had worked like flat out for 3 months on this event, all of a sudden there was like I think everybody kind of feeling a little bit of exhaustion. That was when sort of like burnout started to be spoken about. A lot of people kind of took a lot of holiday, like after that and sort of period. And also some members of the team, didn't quite believe in virtual events as well. So we had, hired 26 people for an in-person conference business, and now we were doing online events. And some people were like, oh, I can't wait for in-person to come back, I don't believe in selling partnerships for online events. So how can I sell a product that I don't believe? So we did. We then we saw a little bit of churn within the team. Yeah, a couple of people kind of left. Quite a few people like really tired and sort of burnt out. And we definitely saw a dip in motivation. I would say kind of in July, after the event, and I was trying to figure it out, but I could see that really there was this motivation issue within the business. And I was feeling, pretty tired, as well. But again, because of the position that we were in the business, I didn't feel that I could have a vacation, at the time, and just kind of wanted to steer the ship through, because, we were generating revenue, but also, our costs were quite high still. So that quarter, we still losing a bit of money, and I needed to kind of get us back to profitability. Then when we went into Q3, we had quite a poor July, which then I sort of realised, well, I think motivation is part of a big part of the issue. Managed to fix that and understand. Once we understood the problem, we kind of managed to fix it, and then started to pick things up again as well. And the performance of the business started to improve. But certainly, burnout. I mean, as a team, it's something that has been spoken about throughout the year. I never heard it in 2019, but this year it's a frequently discussed topic. I think myself, I was probably a little burnt out, around that kind of August, September time, and certainly, like personally, I was under the weather through the whole of September. Had a chest infection through the whole of September. I had to end up taking like one day off to kind of rest in bed because I just felt like so ill that I couldn't actually work. And then eventually I managed to shake that off. And actually, like this quarter, energy levels, have been better. So like certainly myself, I don't feel burnt out, and I can see a correlation with some of the team where they said we had dips here, but we're kind of back now, and so on, and some that are burnt out now, but weren't kind of then, and so on, and so there's kind of managing that. But there's also been stresses and strains and concerns and a few sleepless nights. Obviously, thinking about finances and cash flow. Being kind of the big kind of challenges, right? And we've had to, as part of cutting costs, initially it's something I didn't necessarily want to do, but I guess there's always that kind of reluctance. But we had to make a round of redundancies as well. To really kind of bring our costs down, because obviously employing 26 people, when your revenue is down 50%, is pretty tough.
But it's also, I guess, it's also that you've hired a team to deliver in-person events, right? So, and actually, the events business is really, really hard to manage, the logistics, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, much more streamlined when it's an online business. So the revenue's down, but also you just, I guess, don't need that many people or those specific people that you have in place.
Exactly, and it was a combination of, like, say, not necessarily needing that many people, as there wasn't as much to do, but also and it came about a number of conversations. Well, like, the people that we've got, are they necessarily the right people for the business that it is now? Because it's a different business now. And so we had to kind of think about those questions, and that's why we kind of analyze and say, well, either we don't need this role anymore, or this person is not right. We hired them to do something, but we're a different business now, so we don't need that role anymore. And the only reasons that we let people go. But then when you're letting people go, that impacts morale of the team as well.
Of course.
So kind of be challenges around that. I do feel like the team, and I think myself, are kind of we're in a good place now. Certainly that the year is coming to an end, and I think a lot of people can't wait for the year to end. They can't wait for their Christmas vacations, as myself. Like, hopefully, and I'm pretty sure it will be, Christmas period and 2 weeks off will be my first vacation since February, and I'll feel hopefully that'll be well deserved, and then we can look forward to a more prosperous 2021.
Yeah, good man. Well, obviously, me personally, I'm grateful for what you do in the SaaS community, and I'm sure everybody that's in the SaaS community will want SaaStock to thrive, because you bring so many people together. So there are a few things you said there as well. I mean, you kind of have the tough part of the business being massively affected, and then on the kind of the personal side, there's all these restrictions. You can't see friends and family, so it's almost like I'm speaking for myself as well. It's like you get hit hard on the business side, and you don't even have the personal side to kind of prop you up. So it's those two things simultaneously which make it really, really tough.
Yeah, I think that was the toughest thing, I think, for the team, right? Because we've got quite a young team. For me, that didn't impact me so much, because like my life was my business, kind of, pretty much. It is my family as well. But working from home for me, we weren't working from home before, so we were in an office, but I would commute 3 days in, 3 days a week in, and I would spend three hours a day on the train. But I would use that time to either work or read, and actually wasn't too bad. But actually, I didn't see my family really on those 3 days a week that I was kind of commuting. And then Monday, Friday, I would, and the weekends. But and then working for me from home, I'm lucky enough that I'm speaking to, I've got my home office, which is separated from the rest of the house or the family, because they're downstairs. But a lot of the younger team, who maybe they've moved to London, for the first time, which is the case for some of them. They're looking there to have the quality of life of London and the social life and meet new friends. And they're living in, either shared accommodation or small flats or whatever, and they don't have that home office setup. Then there isn't that separation from work and life, and they're more confined in, and they're not getting the benefits of London, because everything is kind of shut. So I think they found that a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
I don't have much of a social life. So for me,
I always say the same thing. It didn't seem to affect me so much as well. I think, yeah, my life is my business, and I'm past that age of wanting to go to the pubs in the evening and stuff. So for us, it's maybe not so bad, but for these younger people, yeah, it's really, really tough
yeah, exactly.
for
My,
sure.
my life hadn't changed dramatically, on the weekends or whatever, because generally on the weekends, I like to just to recover from work and kind of to stay in,
Yeah.
relax and look after the kids, right? But for other people, when their options are limited, I think, yeah, it's been.
Yeah. Let's talk about let's on a more positive note. So, now looking forwards and back to to stoicism, and the obstacle is the way. You could argue that yes, now you can't do in-person events, but now everyone's focusing on online events. And although the online event experience is very different, of course, and I'd be interested to get your take on the difference between offline and online, but it's also a huge opportunity because you now increase the scope of the events because I guess the in-person ticket sales can be many hundreds of pounds or euros, whereas actually now you can attract people that maybe it's not so much of a big commitment, both from time and from money, so that the size of the opportunity increases massively. So you started SaaStock Remote, and I know you used the Hopin platform because, like I said, we were there. Super interesting, actually. Hopin. For anyone that's not familiar with Hopin, and you probably know the story much better than me, but I know the guy. Is it Johnny? Is the
Sorry,
CEO still came? Johnny? Yeah, Johnny. Yeah, yeah. He. As far as I'm aware, he was building Hopin, but it was to supplement the in-person events. That was his original business model. It wasn't like he made it during the pandemic or he preempted the pandemic. He was already building it to supplement what you were doing and maybe to increase the scope of the audience. And of course, he got dealt. Not to say COVID is a blessing, but I mean, in his eyes, it probably is from a business perspective. So you guys used Hopin, which is like a virtual event experience where people can have booths. There's different stages. There's networking. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the networking, and it's like kind of chat roulette in a way. You never know who you're going to get. But what was the first event like? How was that for you? And kind of like what were the key learnings when you had some time to sit down and digest it?
Yeah, we chose Hopin because basically, like the year before, I'd been asked by an investor who was at Excel to have a look and see, what do you think? They were sort of interested in my view on it because they were looking to invest. And so I looked at it and I was like, oh well, if it can actually do this, like then this is pretty interesting. I shared it with my team, and so I reckon this was like, it must have been like halfway through 2019. Shared it with my team, and we were like, oh, I've always thought about doing virtual events, and like here's a great solution. Should we do it? But in the end, that was the conversation, and that kind of drifted away because we were just kind of focused on in-person events, and we didn't come back to it. But then all of a sudden, when we realised that we wanted to go virtual, I was like, oh, I remember this platform, Hopin.
Yeah.
Went to have a look. We kind of reached out to them, and then like Johnny did the sales call, and I remember he was definitely he was a big character like on the call, and I was like, look, guys, we need to move fast. The team had researched some other options, and I was like, look, this just does everything we need. Like I'm not even going to look at some of the other stuff. Let's just do it. All right, and struck a deal with Johnny. And then we ran SaaStock Remote. And I think we were one of the first. They'd obviously run other events on Hopin, but we were one of the first sort of big conferences to run an event, an online conference sort of that year. So there was definitely a lot of intrigue and excitement in the community about something kind of new and shiny.
Yeah.
And we saw that, and so we saw some really kind of good engagement, with the with our community on the platform. We made, I would say, a big learning from it. Like a mistake that we sort of made is that we saw Hopin as, oh look, it can do 80% of what an in-person conference can do. As you say, virtual expo, networking, different stages of content, etc. Just at a high level, kind of calling out three things. So we basically took our template from in-person Dublin event, we put it onto Hopin, and
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work. Like we've sort of learned that you need to treat online conferences differently to your in-person, and so that was a kind of a big kind of learning for us. We ran like 5 stages of content like pretty simultaneously, right? And we had almost 200 speakers at SaaStock Remote, and it was a bit of like overwhelm. So you, as an attendee, you didn't know where to go because you wanted to see this talk, but you wanted to see that one. So you couldn't be at two places, or you couldn't be at 5 places at the same time. So we didn't need that many speakers. We didn't need that many stages. I think additionally, virtual expos in the way, I think they have a place, but they didn't work in the way that we operated it, for remote. And even
Can I ask why that is? Sorry to interrupt, but why? Because I guess in an in-person event, you can have those separate stages and people, at the same time, and people can choose kind of where they want to go, and it all works fine.
yeah,
Why does that not work in an online environment?
yeah. Why doesn't it work? I just think with the size of the audience that we have, we were kind of spreading them quite thin, but
Got it.
also giving. Like there was overwhelm. We were getting feedback like, "Hey, we're just overwhelmed about where to go, what to watch. Can you just simplify it and just kind of
Hmm.
maybe just kind of have one track, of content, and we just kind of follow that." And
Yeah.
that was just the feedback that we got. Like, guys, we're overwhelmed. So it's like you've got all of this good stuff going on. I don't know where to go, right? Yeah, as you said, it's weird. At an in-person conference, and so at the SaaStock in Dublin, we will have 5 stages of content.
Yeah.
And people will just say, okay, I'm going to go and watch that talk, I'll watch this one, etc. So we're not just giving them that kind of one option. We have a bit of something for everyone. It just didn't like translate for us online. So we have then got, if you look at SaaStock APAC, which we did recently, and then we've got Blueprint, which is coming out next week. We just got 1 stage of content.
Yeah.
Focused on that and keeping everybody kind of in one place and just simplifying it. So that's one thing that we've kind of iterated on. I think like the virtual booths, like so when we heard about them, and so look, you can have live salespeople like in the booths, right? And you can
Yeah.
do demos, etc. It's like fantastic functionality, and for us, like selling to partners, that was kind of one of the key selling points as well. But then what we learned was a couple of things. One is you certainly within Hopkin, and I think a lot of other virtual platforms, a lot of people are really going for the content or the networking, right? But they're not going to be sold to.
Yeah.
And there isn't that natural flow that you get at an in-person conference of like, I'm going to walk from stage 1 to stage 4, and in between I'm going to go through 20 sponsors and I might chat to a couple of them, right? Here you can just totally avoid the virtual expo by clicking on the stage or going to networking. So there's no compelling reason to go unless you're naturally curious. And when you go into the virtual booths, you've got these hungry salespeople that are just like, talk to us. We really need somebody to talk to, right? And the person gets there's a psychological barrier there because they don't want to be sold to, and then there's a barrier to ask to enter the conversation, and so there's all these barriers kind of in the way. And even I sort of like at remote, I was going around to a few partner booths, and then I remember I went to the Profitwell booth, and Patrick Campbell was there talking to 2 sales reps, and then you could see that like 10 people were watching just a conversation between Patrick and sales reps, right? And then they started saying, "Hey guys, we can see you. Does anybody want to come in? We can see you, lurkers. Come in." And I was like, "Oh, it's like, no, we don't want to come in. He's called us a lurker. Like, we want to leave now."
Yeah.
And so there were these barriers, right? But anyway, so we then learned what we've said, and we've spoken to a lot of our SaaS partners, and they've done a lot of events, and they're saying, look, what we're learning is like not to put sales reps in the booths, to make it self-service, just to have some video content there and an offer, right? And people will go in, they're not going to be intimidated, they're not going to be sold to. They can watch the video, they can watch the content, they can take the offer if they want, and it's just a bit more kind of relaxed, right? And I think treating it, as a SaaS, it's self-service. People go in, have a look. If they want to be contacted, if they want to learn more, they'll learn more, but they don't want to be sold to in that way. So we've now kind of moved towards like not having, almost sort of mandating, like, don't bring your sales reps into the booths. You will get less traffic going to the booths, but actually a benefit, one thing that we found from online events is the ability, and certainly with Hopkin, to pull lots of data on the platform. So we can say to partners like, here's who interacted with you. Here's who went to your booths. Here's who clicked on the CTA. These are the people, all GDPR compliant that viewed your talks, etc. And so we're providing more MQLs than we were in person. But I do think the level of MQLs is slightly lower than it was, would be in person. There's a bit more, probably a few more tire kickers and a few people that, maybe not as strong sort of ICPs, online. And I think also we ended up doing quite well from the sales side of things, for partnerships for remote. And what we had was, you had your traditional kind of, platinum, gold, silver partners, then your startup partners. But the way that it is kind of stacked in Hopin is that obviously you've got your top level kind of partners at the top, so they're getting the kind of above the fold, kind of visibility. And then if you're like a startup partner, if you're number 7,
which was us.
Yeah,
which was us, by the way, right at the bottom. Yeah.
sorry about that, Todd. But so if you're
It's okay, Alex, I forgive you.
If you're a startup partner, you are right down at the bottom, right? And so you've got even less like people going right down to the bottom, right? You've got to be really curious to that. So we saw that lack of traffic. So we have now like taken out like the startup program, sort of like booths, and even the silver booths as well. So it generates revenue for us, but the actual experience for the customer is not great. And what the top tier customers are getting, which the bottom tiers were not, is like a bit more kind of content and getting a lot of value out of the content. And so we've just had to kind of stop selling that, but then move to this more kind of self-service model as well. And then what we've seen is this kind of shift and improvement of our NPS, from our delegates and partners by doing so.
Yeah, super interesting. That kind of leads nicely onto the future of events. I mean, of course, you made the decision to do SaaStock remote. You took the learnings from that. I mean, that's completely acceptable. You would never have known how these things would have run unless you did it right, and you did. So, knowing what you know now, and perhaps having a little bit better line of sight in terms of the other side of this vaccine, although nobody can accurately predict that, but maybe we're looking towards the end of next year. What does the future look like for SaaStock, and how are you combining the offline and online, if you are at all?
Yeah, no, good question. I mean, so for us, I mean, I spoke to the team in September. We were talking about the new SaaStock, right, and what we want to be, and we actually want to be become a subscription first business, right? We've gone through this digital transformation, or still going through it, but we want to be subscription first. We want to kind of we're still working on our kind of membership offering, but effectively, want to place this kind of like front and center, and try and get our community, to become members and just give them the complete value of SaaStock, for one annual kind of membership fee or monthly fee, as well. And we're going to have the combination of online and in-person conferences. I am a big fan of the online events and the benefits that they bring, the new things that we can do with online conferences, and the way I think we have an ability to be a bit more experimental around content, not too crazy, but just kind of do things. We're kind of treating the content online is a bit more like a TV show type stuff. Whereas when we go back to in person, I imagine we're going to be doing a lot more kind of traditional kind of keynote fireside chat type stuff, which generally just kind of works there. But we're being a little bit more kind of bold, I think, around the content creation, and we're enjoying that. Obviously, as
what type of stuff? What type of stuff are you doing, Alex? It's you're intrigued. It's a bit more bold.
Yeah, so I think like two examples. So for SaaStock APAC, we said, well, let's look at one of the things that we're kind of looking at and trying to become like fascinated at, but is around the active users on at the event, and as a kind of key metric for us. So how do, like, with online, what we've seen, and something didn't sort of necessarily we haven't spoken about, but so for SaaStock remote, you had 3,000 people register, right? 2,000 actually showed up at the event, but we peaked at 1,000 at any one time as active users.
Mm-hmm.
So people just kind of, people I spoke to afterwards, they're like, yeah, we had it on, and I watched this talk and I watched that talk, but then I had to go back to work, And the big challenge with online conferences that in-person doesn't have is that obviously when you're at an in-person conference, you're fully there, your out of office is on, you're in Dublin for 3 days, right?
You're
committed, you're there morning, noon and night, right? And with online, there's that commitment is not there. And so I think the average attendance was something like 3.5 hours, and that was like a 20-hour event, right? So people are just coming in and out, as when they please. So we want to, how do we improve this? And like one thing that we looked at for APAC, as we're now, our mindset is trying to go, move away from those kind of traditional kind of keynotes and panels and stuff like that. Was to kind of create content. Think about it as like almost like a Netflix series, and that in a Netflix series, you don't go in and watch episode 3 and 7 and then and then leave, right? And say, I got my fix of Queen's Gambit on episode 3 and episode 7, and I didn't need to watch the rest, right? So what we're like, okay, we're going to tell a story, right? And we're going to give you proven steps, etc. And we come up with 10 episodes that actually you want to watch all of them, right? And that's something that we did at APAC. And again, we just saw an increased feedback performance from our NPS. And what we're looking at for SaaStock Remote, which we've moved to end of February in 2021, is that we're going to have 2 days of content. The main pillars are still going to be adapt, survive, and thrive. But what we're going to do on the first day is really focus on storytelling and have stories from our speakers about how they adapted, survived, or thrived, right? And really trying to get into that kind of TV sort of mindset that you're kind of watching a program, HBO or whatever, and you've got again, we spoke about Zoom Info before, but one of our partners, Henry Schuck, CEO of Zoom Info, is telling a story maybe about how he took them to IPO, during a pandemic, right? And I think that as an online concept, perhaps rather than doing a traditional kind of 30-minute presentation, about how do you get to 1 million in revenue, it could be something that we might be sort of well received and a bit more innovative. But then what we're looking on the second day is then to do things that are a little bit more tactical. So kind of bringing in sessions where it's like, here's how to hire your first VP of sales as an example, but kind of make it interactive and so on. So have the tactical stuff, but have the story kind of telling stuff as well. So you can come in and you have 2 days which are not exactly the same. So that's kind of what we're thinking in terms of what we're doing.
Sounds really exciting, and it makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it now, everyone's stuck at home. I mean, there's so much content to consume. It's endless. So I guess for you, if you're kind of living and dying off the content, and you can't have the show, the in-person live event, then you've got to up your game, right? And you've got to be more clever about it. You've got to add that sequencing in so people follow the story. You've got to make it more interactive, and it makes a lot of sense. And I guess I'm really intrigued to see how it's going to go for SaaStock.
I'm excited for that one. So looking forward to starting work on that content.
Yeah. Well, Alex, listen, thank you so much for your time. It's been great having you on. What should people be aware of? You mentioned you have the SaaStock blueprint, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, so we got. I'm not sure when this is being published, but we got blueprint on Tuesday, the 15th of December, and again, that's really how do we get you as a CEO, SaaS CEO, from a good startup to a great scale up, and we've got those steps to getting to 10 million in ARR, the proven steps to doing that. So that's going to be exciting, and you can catch that at saashowto.com/blueprint. And then the next big event will be SaaStock Remote, which will be end of February, which will be launching again soon. So that'll be out to market, and so you can check that out. And that's all really going to be, as I said, like around how do you adapt, survive, and thrive in 2021. So excited for that. But for any other information, go to saashowto.com and you'll see what's cooking and how we can help you as a SaaS founder and SaaS business.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, Max, and speak soon.
Thanks, Todd. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. If you want to get links to any of the resources we discuss in the interview, head over to upromedia.com/podcast. Until next time, take it easy.